Hey, everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives of people in my network, the leaders in my network. And these are great leads that I'll be interviewing to get to the books that have contributed the most to who they are as a person, the work they do in their business, if they're working for somebody else. And the types of categories of books that I cover in this series are one where A, they're sharing it with me. Category B is when we're covering a book that we've both read and we're covering it specifically for the series or we've read it in our past lives. The third category is when I get to speak to the author and or publisher about the book that they've put out and the message that they want to get out to the audience that's out there. In this particular episode, my guest is Jeff Buehner. And 30 years ago, Jeff came across the writings of the richest man to ever walk the earth, Sultan Musa of Mali, who could not talk openly about how he learned his wealth secrets, so he embedded the principles of his success in a fairy tale. Contained in his writings is something called the language of the gods. When you speak the language, the world obeys your commands. As Jeff dabbled in speaking the language, some very strange coincidences occurred. So he got serious about speaking it, and his whole world changed. He went from a $60,000 a year concrete guy to making hundreds of thousands a month in a new business that just dropped in his lap. Over the last 30 years, Jeff has successfully mentored and coached countless others to speak this all-important language that changes everything. When you learn to speak the language of the gods, you can drastically improve your sales, success, fitness, relationships, and anything else you desire. It's all contained in Jeff's book, The Sultan's 7 Secrets. And Jeff and I met in a podcast community. We came across each other's work, got to talking, learned a little bit about each other's experience, what we were out to achieve with the work that we were doing. So here we are. I wanted to have him on for this conversation. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining me.
John, thank you for having me. I was looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah. It has been a while since we spoke, and obviously, you know how things get in the way and get managed in life, but I'm glad we're finally here for this conversation. Now, Jeff, who are you today? Obviously, I read the bio, speaks volumes to what you're driven by, but what is the everyday work that you do with your clients, the everyday work that you do in general? What does that look like?
Well, my everyday work is land development. That's what I do, and rural land development specifically. So, mini farms, self-sustaining farms. Right now, outside of the country, a little Caribbean country called Belize. That's where I'm working. But for many, many years, 20 years, I did it in northern Arizona.
And I guess, yeah, we'll get into how you got into that work in this next question. So what I typically ask my authors is, can you walk me through your career to when you started to now? Typically, I like to start when somebody goes into maybe college or goes into the workforce. What did that look like, those first couple steps? And then what did that path look like to now?
Yeah, I was the longest student in history. I went to not come out with a degree. I went to university for 5 years and finally just decided to wrap it up. I got an associate's degree in German just because I can speak that language, and got out of there and went to work. And at the time that matters, I'd been out of college. I'd been working as a concrete contractor. And I was frustrated because, the story I told myself in my head and the story I told everybody else was, I work harder than anyone I know. And yet that guy, they're all driving around in their BMWs doing better than me financially. And it's not fair. That's the story I ran in my own head. And I tried that story on a woman who I was working for. We were working in her backyard, and she and her husband were everything I wanted to be, but couldn't see any way to get there. They were very wealthy. They were remodeling these beautiful old estates and turning them and selling them for a lot of money. I mean, they're just wonderful people, though. And she came out and talked to me, and I ran that story past her. And right in the middle of it, she just turned around and walked away. It's an incredibly embarrassing moment for me because I blew my opportunity to get some advice from a mentor, because instead of being, the kind of person you want to advise, I was belly aching,
Mm.
complaining. And she just walked away from that. She didn't want to hear it. But here's the thing. She came back and she handed me what really wasn't a book. I call it a manuscript. It was actually just a stack of papers clipped together. And this is the book that changed my life. This is the book I'm going to talk to your guests about today.
So this is what, like in your 20s that you met this woman and had this experience?
I was 33 at the
Okay.
time.
Oh, okay.
So I'd had, like at least 10 years of serious hard work and frustration, and going backwards financially a little bit. Not in the beginning, but what happens in construction is you start robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so now you're trying to finish this job and get paid to pay the bills of 2 or 3 jobs back. And when that starts happening, it's bad news. You're falling behind a little bit all the time, and you can't keep it up. At some point, it's going to catch up to you, and you're going down. And that's where I was at 33.
So in going deeper into your story, you say 5 years of college and came out with an associate's. What was it about those 5 years? Why?
I got bad advice right off the bat. Somebody told me, an older friend of my father told me to go into economics, and then I could go to law school or MBA school. Economics is exactly, once you get past Econ 101, it's exactly the wrong course of study for me. I'm very practical. I want real answers. I want black and white. This is right, that's wrong. And in economics, there's none of that. It's all right or it's all wrong, depending on whether you can back it up or not. And I learned to hate economics with a white hot passion. So 3 or 4 years into 3 years into that, I changed my major. And by then I needed money. I was paying my own way. It was just like it went downhill fast because I couldn't stick to anything, and I didn't have the money to go on to MBA school or law school. So I knew I had to just go to work. But it took about 2 more years for that to finally, for me
Sink
to
in.
finally give in, and say, all right, I'm not gonna come out with a degree.
So when you say you're more the black or white person, where does that come from?
Comes from being raised on a farm. I think, there's get it done and there's a right way to get it done. And if you don't do it that way, the animals suffer. It's just, I like a rigid schedule and a to-do list that has meaning, and you have to get it done. You got to do it right.
Yeah, and you can see the impact right away. You know what I mean? Like in economics, you say you propose some kind of policy, you don't see it play out for months. You don't see its impact materialize for a year. Where
Right.
like in farming, obviously, I'm no farmer, never have been, but I can imagine if you don't get that done, you're going to see the impacts within the day, within that day.
Within that year, I mean, you bale the hay too early, it's going to self-combust in the barn, and you just had a barn fire. If you let it sit out there too long and it gets rained on, it's worthless. Nobody will buy it. You can't use it at all. It's just, so I like that. The other thing that I'll just tell you quickly really bothered me is that as I got into those 300 and 400 classes of econ, I realized that, there's a room full of 7, maybe 10 guys. And if 10 guys were there, 7 of them are taking this class for the second time, and 2 of them are taking it for the third time because they all need A's, and we were graded on the curve. And I'm paying my own way. It ticked me off because I needed an A, and the thought of I got to pay for this class 3 times to compete with those yahoos to get my A. It really, I just lost all faith in the education system at that point.
No, I
At
hear
some
that.
point, I'll say I had lots of faith in the beginning.
Yeah. So Jeff, why don't we Yeah, if you can pick up the story where she brought you out that manuscript, we can do dive into the book in a couple minutes, but why don't we finish up how you got to now from when she brought you that manuscript to now? What does that look like?
Well, everything changed for me. And I'm going to tell you something that happened that night. So it wasn't like I had to wait a long time. Everybody listening wants something or more of something, whether that's more money, more love, the way you want to be loved, better health, better fitness, more vision, more excitement and fun in life. We all want something.
Mhm.
The trick is to get those things to come to you. And many of the people in your audience can relate to what I'm about to say, which is oftentimes the more you chase something, the more you try to make it happen, the more elusive it becomes. It's like you're chasing a horse in the field, and the more you chase it, the further it runs away from you. The trick is to learn to get it to come to you. And that's what this language of the gods is all about. And I want to get to that quickly so we don't lose your audience. But I'm telling you, there is a language you're speaking right now, this very instant, that anything you say in that language, the world obeys your commands. And that's right out of this manuscript. Sultan Musa of Mali wrote that. It's put you where you are. You've put yourself where you are, whether that's relationships, money, health, it doesn't matter. You've been speaking this language, has nothing to do with the words that come tumbling out of your mouth. But anything you say in this language, that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to stay until you change the way you speak this language.
Jeff, so we'll dive into the book in a couple minutes.
Okay.
2 questions before we do that. Does it reconcile? I'm always curious about my guests and any leader for that matter, who they were as a kid. Does it reconcile to your childhood that this is what you're doing today? Does it make sense from your childhood or not?
No, where I was at the age of 33, frustrated, working hard manually, that relates to everything in my childhood because I came out of that with a core belief that the only honorable way to make money was to work hard for it manually. And
Mhm.
that's just a core belief that I had growing up. All my friends around the farm, we talked about how hard we worked, how many bales of hay we touched that summer. And we took tremendous pride in that. It was our identity. And we made fun of people who didn't make their money that way. We called
Mm.
them city slickers and pitchmen, and that wasn't a compliment. Uh, Slick willies. And
Where did
we
you grow
didn't
up,
want to
Jeff?
be that. I grew up in Heber City, Utah, a small farming community. It's not a farming community anymore. It's really expanded, but that's where I grew up.
And Jeff, what does leadership mean to you?
Leaders have two things. They have knowledge. They know something that other people don't know about their industry, and they've earned that knowledge. So that's the second thing. They have experience, real experience, why you do it this way and not that way. That's leadership. If somebody can, and they don't have to always be good at communicating, but they have to be good at showing that they have the knowledge and the experience. And those people succeed in that industry.
So, Jeff, at this point, let's jump into the book. So, yeah, I guess we can pick up the story, the manuscript you got, the language that you were introducing us to. Why don't you pick up, excuse me, when she came out with that manuscript to your writing the book, how that came to be?
Oh, yeah, that's a 30-year span. But the day she gave me the book or handed me that stack of papers, she said, read this tonight and bring it back to me in the morning. Now, I wasn't going to do that. I took it. I thanked her, because I wanted to be in good graces with her. I wasn't going to read her dang book.
Yeah, yeah.
My day started at 5:30 in the morning. That's when my alarm went off. And at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, my crew went home, but not me. That's when I went out selling new jobs, picking up supplies, uh, collecting money. I was lucky to wolf down my dinner by 7:30 or 8, take a shower and fall into bed so I could do it the next day all over again. There was no way I was going to read her little book. But I read the first page, and this was by pure accident. I mean, I literally was not going to read it, but I put it on the bedstand so I'd remember to take it back to her. And I was waiting for my wife to come to bed. She was helping with one of the babies. I don't remember what all was going on, but I read the first page and I stayed up all night reading the rest of it and taking copious notes. Right off the bat, John, it told the story of Sultan Musa of Mali, the richest man, or at least one of, to ever walk the earth. And I'm going to put this in perspective, because when I say that, you think, oh, one of the richest men. You know Elon Musk and you know Jeff Bezos, two of the wealthiest men alive today. If you take both of their wealth and combine it together, you get close to Sultan Musa of Mali, but you don't catch him. And you certainly don't pass him. But he lived in the 1300s in West Africa. This guy was so wealthy that you can't even fathom. But that's not all he was. The guy had every aspect of his life running perfectly. His love life, his relationship with his wife is the thing of fairy tales. He solved the problems of his kingdom long before he became sultan. It's said of him that he built a new school or started a new school every Friday. And in these schools, he taught the principles that were in his writings, and he wrote extensively. He was unbelievably benevolent. He lifted the whole kingdom out of poverty, not just himself, and he stopped all of the wars. When he became sultan, that was the end of the little warring factions that were everywhere. And it wasn't because he went and put them down with his military, which he could have done. It's just they fell in love with him. They wanted to be like him. They loved the way he lived and acted. And when he was called to be deputy sultan, he was called to that position because he was already independently wealthy. He didn't need to steal anything from the current sultan. And the people already loved him and wanted to follow him, wanted to be like him. So this is an incredibly successful person in all aspects of life. But he didn't start out that way. His father died when he was a young man, and that plunged him and his mother into unbelievable poverty. The kind that, if you're living in America or Canada or really anywhere, you can't fathom. His mother couldn't guarantee him a meal every day. So he had to go out and steal food to stay alive. And he became a pretty good thief. And at the age of 12, an older thief recruited him to pull off a heist. And they ended up doing it. They pulled it off. But instead of the older thief sharing the wealth with little 12-year-old Musa, you know what happened. He sealed him in a cave and left him to die. And he did. This is where the story gets interesting. After several days, no food, no water, Musa perishes. He dies, meaning, and this is what he found out as soon as he did die, that all that means is you have a spirit body that has the force of life in it, and you have a physical body. And at some point, the spirit body just ejects itself out of the physical. And that can happen if your physical body is damaged or diseased or just gets too old to let you inhabit it anymore. Now, he didn't know any of this until this happened to him. And he met a man made of light and love. That's what he called him. He didn't identify him by any other name, just a man made of light and love who taught him all kinds of things about how the world works, how people work, why you are you and I'm me. And everyone who knows us knows that I will react a certain way every time. They can count on me reacting a certain way in any given situation, and they can count on you acting a certain way. So what gives us our personalities? What makes us us? He taught him this language of the gods, and that's what I want to jump into, because I want to teach your audience how to speak this. And just to give you a little taste of what I'm talking about here, when I learned to speak it, at first I was a little nervous to even try it, because I was so excited when I read about this that I thought, man, if this doesn't work, I literally am going to jump off a high building. I'll be so disappointed, so let down, but it did work. And that's where, I'll give you a taste. I went from being a $60,000 to maybe $80,000 a year concrete guy to making 3 times that amount every single month like you talked about, in a business that was right down my alley, that came to me, and it matched the new way I was speaking this language of the gods. And everything changed for me. I mean, at first I just used it for financial reasons. But there's only so many cars you can drive, so many big houses you build for yourself. So, at some point, and all along the way, I'm having more kids and they're getting older, and your vision changes, and you want to be a good person. You want to do things right. You want to be a good parent. You want your kids to be successful. So then I started using it on everything else. Oh, and of course, I got out of the concrete business and started getting fat. So at some point I looked down and said, whoa, I got to use it on me, on my body. But anything you say in this language, and I'll add everything you say in this language, the world obeys your commands. So at some point we ought to jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm following your lead. I'm willing to learn and listen.
Well, let's go. So listen, one of the things that makes it easy for me to teach the concepts, what I call the Sultan's 7 Secrets. That's the title of my book. And by the way, I have never seen that publication that she handed me published. I keep looking for it. I keep waiting, and it's never been published as far as I know.
So was it, Jeff, was it just kind of like an old, really old, ratty looking,
No.
broken down book, or was it like a manuscript in terms of somebody was putting it together, or she just never told you where it came from?
No, I knew where it came from. I found out where it came from because it talks about it in the manuscript itself. So it was first written in Arabic. That's what he wrote it in. Then it was translated by Antoine Galland into French. Antoine Galland only published a part of it because the rest of it, he was terrified of. It talks of, near-death experiences and 2 bodies and this language of the gods. He was in academia and government. That's how he made his money, and he was high up in government. And he knew if he started talking about any of that, he'd lose his station in life. I mean, this is the 1600s. By the time he got the manuscript, people were still put to death for the crime of heresy at that time. In fact, even today, John, as well as I do, you kind of got to watch your mouth. You can't just say anything. You can get in trouble.
Yeah.
So he never published that second parchment, but he did publish the first parchment, which was a fairy tale that Sultan Musa of Mali wrote to embed the secrets, including the language of the gods, that he learned during this near-death experience. And that fairy tale is Aladdin and the Magic Lamp. And he used that to preserve his life. He would teach these principles by telling the story and representing, what each element of the story meant. And if anyone jumped on him, if anyone started causing trouble for him, he'd just say, "Hey, it's just a fairy tale, dude. It's a
Yeah.
story, chill out."
Yeah.
Because even sultans can get in big trouble if you start saying things that make you sound crazy. But I'm going to take you through this fairy tale, if you don't mind, and take your audience through it. Yeah, I'm
Please.
not going to cover all 7 principles, but I'm going to cover the first 3 because you have to know these. And the third one is the language of the gods, which I'm going to teach everybody. And by the way, you don't have to take anything I'm saying at face value. You don't have to believe me at all. You start speaking the language of the gods, and you'll prove it to yourself the way I did. Things happened very, very quickly. And I'll tell you how you can see what's happening in a minute. But let's jump into these 3 elements of the fairy tale. So, first element, you have Aladdin, this boy. And it's the greatest rags to riches story, but he starts out just this kind of stupid street urchin, and he doesn't know anything, and he's a thief. And Aladdin represents you and me, but it's that part of us that we think of as ourselves. It's the conscious mind. Now, the next thing that pops up that matters is this incredible genie who can get you anything you want if you know how to summon it and command it in the only language it obeys. The genie in the story, in the fairy tale, represents something that Musa called the veiled mind. Now, thankfully, I'm familiar with, and everybody I'm talking to typically is familiar with something called the subconscious mind. So I'm going to use that terminology. The subconscious mind is the mechanism that controls your life. And anything it believes about you, it will make true in your physical world. So just keep that in mind. And it has all the power to do it, believe me. It has all the resources to do it. It's connected to all wisdom, all knowledge. It's even connected to God, but it won't share any of the answers. I mean, it already knows what that multi-million-dollar idea is that would work for you, but it will not tell you about it unless it believes that that would be congruent with the role you're playing. Okay, we'll come back to this in a minute. That leads us to the third element, which is the best part of the story. It's the magic lamp. And I want to ask a question before we start talking about this magic lamp. And by the way, when I tell you the magic lamp is a piece of knowledge, it's a piece of understanding. And once you have it and you're going to walk away with it today, you have your own magic lamp. The only question is, how hard do you want to use it? How often do you want to rub it and put it to work? And on what? Well, let's go back to this genie. And the question I wanted to ask, which is, who is telling your subconscious mind what to believe about you? I mean, if it's true, and I promise you it is, that whatever it believes to be true about you, it will make true in your physical world over time. Who's telling it what to believe? You are. You're telling it right now. You've been telling it your whole life. But again, doesn't have anything to do with the words that are coming out of your mouth. It doesn't even have anything to do directly with the thoughts you're thinking. It listens to one language, and that language is feelings. Feelings is the language of the gods. Now, don't skip over this. Don't think, oh, yeah, somebody, Zig Ziglar said you got to get in the feeling place of, or, that Hicks lady. You got to feel it. It's way more important than that. Every morning you wake up and you start thinking the same habitual thoughts that you think every morning. If you were to write them down, you'd find out that, oh my gosh, that's what I thought yesterday and the day before. And for 20 years, those thoughts, the things you start dwelling on, make you feel a certain way. So if you wake up and first thing you do in the morning is like, oh crap, I got all these bills and not enough money to cover them. And I wish I was wealthy like the Johnsons, but I'm not. And you're feeling bad about wealth. Feelings are self-fulfilling prophecies. I promise you, your situation in terms of finances is going to match and stay congruent with your predominant feelings about wealth. On the other hand, if you believe, you feel it, you're supposed to be wealthy, you're going to be wealthy, you will be. Your subconscious mind will find a way. You will run into people that other people don't run into. You will have opportunities come your way that don't come to other people. They're not even looking for them, but you are, and you'll find them. Feelings is the language of the gods. All right, so let's talk about that. Let's go back to my example. You feel poor. You worry every day when you wake up about finances or your relationship or your health, whatever it is. If you feel bad about it, it's going to stay that way until you change the way you feel. Now, anything can happen to change the way you feel. Some new information can come to you, and all of a sudden, or you see a movie and you think, oh my gosh, I've been doing something wrong. I'm going to change how I act, and that changes how you feel. Or the doctor can give you some medication, or can give you a surgery that changes how you feel about your health. And you can now believe, I'm going to get healthy. And you feel this sense of, I'm recovering, I'm getting healthy, and you will. If you feel that. I mean, I can go on and on about the placebo effect and why it works and how it works. But it's just, let's take that as fact. How you feel, and I'll say it this way. You all know the idiom, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. But I'm going to change that a little to make it more accurate. If you feel deep in your bones, I'm talking core beliefs, subconscious beliefs, that you can, or you feel you can't, you're dead on. You're absolutely right. And you can see this so clearly, John, in other people. It's harder to see in yourself, but you can see people who are surly and cross, and they believe that people aren't kind and they're not nice to them. Well, you're doing that. You're at the party and people come in and see you over in the corner, all, with a sour look on your face. And when they say hi, you just grunt. Well, then I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be with you. I'll go find someone who's not acting like that. And then you take it as proof that I'm not nice, that I don't like you. It's self-perpetuating, these subconscious beliefs. Someone who believes they're going to be wealthy, they're constantly on the lookout for, I know that big opportunity's coming. Where is it? They're talking to people. They're saying things that older guys like me would think, oh, this is an up and coming, this kid. I need him in my organization. I'm going to bring him in. I want his energy. And someone who feels deeply that life is unfair and that Jeff guy got wealthy without working as hard as I do. And if I get in his organization, I'm going to find a way to siphon off some. I know that, I can see that in you. And I'm not hiring you for anything. You're doing it. If your wife is treating you bad, or your husband is treating you bad, you're doing it. And I know you think, well, wait a minute, that lets them off the hook, but your sister wouldn't put up with that crap for 3 seconds. She'd be gone and she'd take the kids and he would never find her again. But you've been there for 20 years. Why? Because you feel like that's who you are. You feel like that's what you deserve. change your feelings, change your life. All right, the next question that pops up is, how in the heck do you do that? I mean, if I have a big stack of bills and not enough money to cover them, I'm supposed to feel good about my finances, Jeff? Okay, so let's just establish right now, you can't look to reality to feel in a way that matches the life you want. So where do you look? All right. Listen very carefully to this part, because this is the real answer you're looking for. Everybody listening has a superpower. You were born with it, and you were a born pro, and you were good at this from the day you got here. And that superpower is the ability to imagine and pretend. Think about when you were a little kid. You could get lost in a pretend make-believe world and stay there for hours, and the other kids would join in. Like when you said, okay, I'm the queen and this is my kingdom, and that old shed is my castle. The other kids didn't correct you. That's not a castle, Jenny. That's the shed where dad puts the lawnmower. What are you talking about? No, they all joined in. They'd all do it. Okay, then I'm the prince, and this fallen log is my steed, and I'm riding into battle. And you'd play that game for hours. You didn't care that your parents lived in a crappy rental, because you were living in daydreams all the time. And you had to be taught to quit doing that. And you were. In fact, if you were doing it, by the time you hit the 4th grade, 5th grade, you were getting punished. You're getting called out by teachers. Hey, Jeff, get your head out of the clouds. You need a dose of reality. Live in the real world. We've all heard them. But I'm here to tell you that at this point in your life, the last thing you need is a dose of reality. What you need is a mega dose of make-believe. That's where your power is. You need to dust off your ability to pretend and imagine and get lost in beautiful daydreams that make you feel good. And do them with purpose and intent and vision. You're the adult now. You get to decide how to speak the language of the gods. You get to decide what kind of life you want. And then you build these basically make-believe imaginary scenarios around that life and spend enough time in them. You got to spend about 60 seconds at a time to reach placebo, which basically changes a subconscious belief. But I don't want to get into hows right now. Let's just talk concepts and the fact that it's important to learn to build these imaginary scenarios and keep track of the ones that make you feel great. Because at some point, you're going to try on enough dreams, just like you try on, shirts at the clothing store, until you know the ones that make you feel great. You're going to imagine living in the woods. You're going to imagine living in the city. You're going to imagine living on a Caribbean island. And as soon as you do that one, it might hit you. Oh my gosh, that's the one that makes me feel the best. When I imagine being next to the ocean in my little Caribbean house, I feel great. Okay, you got one. Get them all. There's only about 8 aspects of life. And as soon as you have them all, you've got what I call your magnificent obsession. You know what the best career for you would be. You know the right amount of money coming in every month, the right amount to have in the bank, the right relationship for you. Once you have your magnificent obsession, you can spend all of your time dreaming, planning, doing make-believe around that.
Jeff, the 8 that you just spoke about, now is this your translation, the way that you're conveying it to people, or is that still from the manuscript and the fairy tale?
Oh yeah, that's my counting them up. There's finances and money, there's health and fitness, there's relationships, romantic relationship and then relationships like with friends and kids and family. So I've counted up about 8, and that's all I can come up with. You know, there's environment, your home and your cars, what's perfect for you, what kind of home, what neighborhood, what car do you want to drive? And you got to figure it out, because the first time I did this, I tried on all kinds of cars. I tried on a yellow Ferrari, and I was imagining myself driving that yellow Ferrari. And here's something that'll happen if you're doing it right. It'll be a little awkward at first. You're trying to imagine yourself driving a car, a certain car. And it's awkward, but if you stay with it, all of the sudden, something unique will happen. A movie will break forth. And you're not creating that movie in your imagination anymore. It's just happening, and you're in it and you're watching it. And all of a sudden you can see that car, you see the hood, you see yourself looking out the windows, you see friends walking down the sidewalk in your neighborhood, you see yourself waving at them, and maybe they wave back, but maybe one of them rolls their eyes. Like, oh, there goes Jeff Buehner in a yellow Ferrari. Of course he'd buy a yellow Ferrari and show off. And you see that and it shocks you. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah. That's how I would roll my eyes if Howard went by in a Ferrari at 33 or 34, you know? So then you change it. Like, okay, no more yellow Ferrari. I don't want people to think of me that way. I'm going to go to like the smallest Mercedes they make and just drive a nice, respectable, but, you know, not the most expensive one car. And eventually that's where I got. But as soon as, and maybe this is a good place to kind of leave teaching of the concepts, but you are exactly what you see yourself as. Well, how do you see yourself as? Well, you have a vision, and that vision is supported by imaginary scenarios. And you think, no, my vision is supported by reality. The way I feel is due to reality. Well, kind of and kind of not.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a quick example. Kid's walking down the hall of the mall, and he's alone. And here come the other direction comes a little group of maybe 3 or 4 girls. And one of the girls looks at him, elbows the other girls, and they all giggle. And then they walk by, they're gone. All right, so a quote unquote real experience just happened for this boy, but he has a choice now. He's going to add value and importance to that experience, and he's going to fill in everything he doesn't know. And there's a lot he doesn't know. Were they laughing at him because they think he looks silly? Or were they giggling because they think he's cute and they pointed him out to their friends? Well, if he picks that one, he's going to feel good about himself. He's going to feel good all day. He's going to feel like girls like me. If he picks the other one, which he will if he has subconscious beliefs that don't allow him to believe that girls like him, and those can come from anywhere, his mom and dad's experience, Aunt Jill and Uncle Mike, I mean, anywhere, he's going to pick the other one and he's going to say, oh, I know it's my hair or my clothes. I always wear stupid stuff and these girls were laughing at me. And he's going to feel bad all day. And when you feel like girls don't like me, how do you act when you get placed in front of a girl? Yeah, you say stupid stuff because of course you do. You're not confident. They see that. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about what you tell yourself you believe. I'm talking about deep-seated subconscious beliefs. Those are always going to be made true over time by the way you think and then act, feel and act. They will lead to the outcome that you believe on a subconscious level. And the only way to stop that is to learn how to fill in, pave over, reverse negative subconscious beliefs, beliefs that aren't serving you well, and recreate brand new subconscious beliefs that serve you well. And you can do that in 60 seconds. It takes no longer than that. Once you have the right imaginary scenario to get lost in, because your feelings will change when you're pretending to have a certain amount of money or to have the right relationship or to have anything you want. And feelings are self-fulfilling prophecies. So that's how you do it. You are in control of your life. Your subconscious mind is a willing servant. Think of it as you're the actor on the stage and you're the director of the movie, but it's a really good stage manager. And it's going to set the stage of your life based on the role you're dedicated to, the character or the role that you're in character for. But if you change the role you're playing, you get into a different character, it will believe it and just change the way it sets up the stage of your life. And that's why I wrote my book, The Sultan's 7 Secrets, because I was true to this woman. I didn't copy the book. In fact, back then it was just a few years before everybody, including myself, had a printer in their home and a PC. You know, I didn't have a printer, a copier. I couldn't have copied it without taking it to a copy place. And she asked me not to, so I gave it back to her without copying it. Just once in my life, I wish, you know, of all the things I've done wrong and all the times I went against somebody's, you know, plea for how I should act, that's the one time I kind of wish I had copied it and just honored her will not to publish it. But I did take good notes. I really did.
So, Jeff, and listen, I appreciate everything you shared. The older I get, the more I believe in that, the more that I see it in my own life, the way that I've lived, the way that I've worked, the things that have stopped me, the things that haven't happened for me. Back in the day, I would have been thinking much in the same way your younger self, you know, pre-manuscript Jeff would have been thinking. And then I look back and I think about, okay, what was my attitude leading into those things where I didn't get this, or I didn't make that, or this didn't come to me? What was my attitude? What did I bring to the table? And it was like a chip on my shoulder. It was, you know, I'm not quite there. It was this disbelief in myself. It was lack of confidence. It was same as what you said, like all these other people have these things, whatever they may be, and I don't. This is where I come from. I can never have that. So it's amazing how that does play into who you are. And on this series, a lot of the conversation, the reason I asked that question about your childhood, a lot of the conversation here plays around who you are today, who you were as a child, and how they're connected. So it's been inadvertently, it's been a therapy session for me because all these great conversations with you all, your takes, your knowledge, your experience shares with me and asks me to open up my mind to the way that I've been thinking. And as you went through everything, breaking down what you learned, what you took away, how you want to convey it to others, I truly believe in that just because I've looked back and thought about the various points in my life when I reached the successes that I wanted to. And I love that you mentioned, you know, your health, your relationships, your business, that there are all these areas where you can focus this. Just me and opening up my experiences, my attitudes, I see things like that playing out. You know, when you have that example of the kids in the mall, you know, all it takes is for you to think one way or the other, and that sets the stage for you from that moment on, because now you're in that mode. Now you're maybe the unattractive mode. I'm not attracted to them, attractive to them. They're making fun of me. So now if anybody looks at you strange, you pull that core memory. Okay, this goes back to me not being attractive. Meanwhile, they're probably looking at some fucking mustard you got on your shirt, but you have it in your head.
Exactly.
So I appreciate that because it just I've seen it in play. I've seen it in play myself. I've seen it in play in other people. Um, yeah, it's just amazing how quickly, and if there's anything faster than automatic, that's what it is. It's not even
Oh yeah.
automatic. It's there. When we wake up, okay, it's just a continuation of what it was yesterday, and that's the way I felt yesterday. And now the experiences today that don't go my way, they're just going to prove, right? That self-fulfilling prophecy. They're just going to prove that I'm not worthy of this or I'm not worthy of that. So it's incredible how they can set the tone.
Well, I'll tell you, I appreciate you kind of summarizing it like that, because that was perfect. That was very simple. And the very day that I started changing the way I spoke, the language of the gods, in terms of, purposefully change how I felt by creating imaginary scenarios around having plenty of money, a great relationship, fit, healthy, energetic. Almost the day I committed to changing the imaginary scenarios I was entertaining in my head to get the feelings of the life I wanted in that regard, you will see things happen. And I promise to tell you how you could tell that it's working. Here's how you can tell. When you truly change how you're feeling about something because of an imaginary scenario that works to change how you're feeling, and you've identified it, you've written it down, you go back to it every day, you're running it every day for at least 60 seconds. The science of psyche, the science part is you're flooding your subconscious mind with feelings that match the life you want. It believes your feelings every time. So it hears these new feelings that you haven't been saying to it before about finances or love or whatever it is. It believes them. And now it will orchestrate situations and circumstances into your life that match those feelings. But how can you know on a conscious level that it's out there doing that? That it's orchestrated, it's out there working now with new subconscious beliefs that it will make true. Here's how you can tell. Once you're doing this about any aspect of life, weird, I'll call them coincidences, are going to start popping up. And the first thing you'll notice is that people treat you differently in that aspect. Like you'll notice, and you'll see it. You'll be able to be like, wow, that's weird. People have never just handed over the money before. I used to have to go collect it, knock on their door, ask for it. Now it's like, I'm almost done, and they come out of the house with a check. That's new. That wasn't happening a year ago or even 3 weeks ago. But it's happening now that I've changed my feelings about people paying me based on brand new scenarios and images and vision that I'm playing in my head of me being wealthy and having tons. Okay, you'll notice these little coincidences pop up, and they will never quit. So a lot of times people who are trained to be them, they will say, okay, so I changed the way I feel and my subconscious mind sends me a different impulse. But what if I don't catch it and I don't act on it? And then it'll quit sending me impulses, right? No. Once you see yourself as a strong, fit, healthy person, it will send you an impulse based on this. The way you see yourself is the way it sees you. So it will send an impulse. Hey, put down the donut, Jeff. Why don't you have one of those carrots, dip it in a nice ranch dressing and enjoy that? Well, you may not at first. You might just munch down the donut. And then that night you're like, oh, I've blown it. No. Your subconscious mind is like a GPS. What happens if it says, at the next light, turn left, and you don't, for whatever reason, you blow past that? Well, does it just turn off? Does it quit saying anything? No. It says
Recalculates. Yeah.
recalibrating. All right, at the next light, turn left, or
Mm.
flip a U-turn, and at this street, turn right. It never stops doing that. You change how you see yourself and how you feel about yourself in that aspect of life, and you can do it with your imagination. You're so good at it, it's a joke. And you use it every day to make every decision that you make. You get in your car to go somewhere. What do? You create a glimpse of where you're going and what direction you'll have to start at, what street you'll have to go down. And you don't even have to do the whole glimpse, but you send a glimpse to your subconscious mind. And now you can get lost in other thoughts, daydreams. You can replay an argument that happened that morning. And your subconscious mind will drive you to the next intersection where you haven't shown it any more glimpses. Then it'll tap on your shoulder and say, hey, I need another one. Are we turning left or are we turning right? And you're like, oh, yeah, well, the store we're going to is over there. You show it in your mind very quickly, fast as a cat. And then, you give it a new glimpse for part of the way. And that's how you get everywhere. It's how you decided what to eat for breakfast. You looked at your options, and quick as a cat, your imagination tasted everything in front of you. The bananas, the oatmeal, whatever was there, the cereal. And whichever glimpse you gave it of, oh yeah, the cereal would taste the best. Bam, the next thing you know, you got a bowl of cereal with a spoon stuck in it and milk poured over it, and you're munching away.
Yeah, it has to be proactive.
Well,
I
you're
find,
doing it. It's just a matter of changing how you're doing it. If you don't like eating oatmeal, send it a glimpse of bacon and eggs and see how fast you're eating bacon and eggs.
yeah,
You don't have to eat oatmeal, but you can do that in every single aspect of your life. Glimpses are how you take control of the helm. The
yeah,
rudder is your subconscious mind. The helm are the glimpses. That's the steering wheel.
and I appreciate how you brought up, we just, especially as a child, the dreaming, the imagination, how that's there. And it's funny seeing it in my own kids who are 2, 5, and 8, and seeing like the older one go through those younger phases where he's just playing. He's happy. He's got
Yeah,
everything he wants right in front of him. If he's not happy with that, he moves on to the next thing, makes
right.
the most of that, moves on to the next thing. Relationships, he's fine playing by himself, fine playing with a friend. And then it's funny, like the older we get, we start looking at society that we're now a part of society. We went from being completely content or unhappy with what we had in front of us to now we're a part of a bigger picture. And now my happiness depends on that bigger picture. Um, so it's just interesting seeing that. And obviously, everything in education that everybody has to be the same. And it kind of indoctrinates unimagination, if that's even a word, is
Oh,
just
it
kind
is.
of it just goes all out the window. And
Yeah.
anytime I've worked with somebody in leadership where they get to the point where they're fulfilled and happy, it's because they've gone back around and picked up a piece of themselves that they left behind. And it plays into, if you trace that back, it plays into who they were as a kid, the imagination they had as a kid, the wonder they had as a kid, that they didn't stop. They didn't just relinquish the control of their life to the script of the career or whatever it may be, but they actually were intentional about bringing their best dormant qualities, expectations of life, their wonder, their imagination into whatever that part of the world is, whether it is their health, their relationship, their work, their business. So I like that what I hear from you is it is just awakening a dormant aspect in ourselves, going back to that imagination, that world of wonder, the dreaming that we had as kids, not just taking, the bland that's in front of us that everybody gets, that's the script of life, society, work, and business, but actually playing with it and creating what we want to see.
Well said. Really
Hmm.
well said.
Jeff, so I guess the piece that's missing for me then is from when you had the manuscript, took some notes, to the time I'd read in your bio about going to learn more about it after that. What did it look like from when you handed the script over in general, handed the script or the manuscript back to the woman, to when you put out the book? What did that look like in terms of learning
Oh,
more
yeah.
about it? And then finally deciding, what was the trigger for finally deciding to write the book?
So I started to have a magical life right away. I mean, I didn't become a millionaire for almost 8 months, 9 months, but that is so fast in terms of reality, how quickly things can change. I shut down my concrete business. I have a brand new business. It's taking off like crazy. Every month we're making more and more and more and more. My new partner came to me through these, GPS type, what I call nudges. I was told, call your old friend that you haven't seen for 10 years. And they kept telling me that. And on about the 12th time that I felt like, oh, I should check up on Brian, I finally did. That story is in the book. And that led to a like a $20 million a year business that he and I ran. I found out he had half a business and I had the other half. I didn't even know. So immediately, I'll say, things changed for me. And every aspect of my life that I applied this magic lamp that I just gave you improved dramatically. So I had a magical life. And when you're doing well, people see it. I mean, I built some big homes and drove a nice car for a long time, and people would come and knock on the door and say, hey, will you talk to me? I can see you kind of know what you're doing. And I'd teach them the Sultan's 7 secrets. And without exception, if they'd apply it, they would go have a magical life too. Well, 30 years later, I'm ready to retire. And I'm going to go live on my farm in Belize, or at least start getting it set up, build a home on the farm and get it set up to where I can retire. And I got a strong nudge that wasn't the right thing to do. I needed to teach these concepts to a lot more than just 100 or 2 people. I needed to get this message out there to millions of people that this is the time people need it the most. We're going into uncertain times. We've always had uncertain times, but the future is a little scarier for most people now than it was 20 years ago when, someone like me thought, oh, future's kind of scary. Uh, things have changed rapidly. People need this now. And so at that point, I knew I had to write the book, which I did. And then the book is basically the 7 secrets that were in the manuscript, the principles. I did my best to describe them accurately. And then also my story of what happened to me as I applied them, but also the tricks, the games, the hacks, the techniques that I developed to apply the concepts. Because none of that was in the Sultan's manuscript necessarily. I had to come up with my own, like the game that changes everything. I invented that and started using it to create the right feelings. And then I'd see the coincidences and all of that. So, and how to track them, how to keep, just a good journal of what happened when I did this and felt that. But all of that's in my book. So it's kind of a twofold, tell the story of Sultan Musa of Mali and his concepts, and then what happened to me for 30 years. So it took a long time to write the book. And then, of course, I had no way of knowing how to get the information out there. I've never done podcasts before or anything else. But as soon as I saw the information going out, imagined millions of people hearing it, the right people came, the right opportunities opened up. Now I'm talking to people like you, and you're doing, great work, just encouraging people and sharing information. And now, a big group of people know more than they did yesterday, maybe just a little bit, but it's very helpful information.
Jeff, when it comes to the book, without giving too much away, can you, even if you just said a word on each of the 7, can you just share what they touch upon? You don't even have to go into the lesson. You don't have to give away the store. Is it possible just to kind of, or the areas? I don't know the best way to describe it, if possible.
The answer to that is no. You have to go step by step. If I throw out the 6th or the 7th, it'll sound a little hokey because you haven't even read the part that Musa learned during his near-death experience, that his spirit body is the one with the life, and that it is a literal child of God, and that the subconscious mind is a willing servant. It doesn't choose your role. The conscious mind does that. It just supports your role. So you got to learn, just focus on those first three that I gave you today. You have a conscious mind, you have a veiled mind, which you can relate to as the subconscious mind. That's fine. It's a little more in depth than that, but covers it enough. And then you have this ability to create feelings by deciding what you entertain in your mind. You can focus on and dwell on that mean thing your wife said this morning, or how badly she treats you, and you just hate it, and you can replay that over and over and over and over and feel bad. And if you do, I promise you, she's going to keep treating you bad. That's just a fact. Or you can seize control of this thing. You can seize control of your life by entertaining a scenario of a woman. Sometimes you have to smudge out her face because you've been with her 20 years. She treated you kind of crappy in one area or another of your life for 20 years. You have to just kind of smudge out her face and imagine, your wife, like the perfect version of your wife. Wife number two, it's her, but it's the perfect version of her
Yeah, because
treating you
we
the
we
way.
we tend to build profiles of
Oh
people
yeah,
based on these misconceptions. So I get what you're
yeah,
saying. If you're building it on what you have, you just view the person in a certain, not even like, kind of like a shadow. Like it's just
yeah.
maybe sometimes it may be negative. So it's almost like you have the same person, but you kind of have to restart and not envision them the same way.
Yep. Change the imaginary scenarios that you're entertaining in your mind. That will change your feelings. And then you will see, if you do it enough with the right amount of intensity, which I teach in my book. If you want to grab it, I'll give it out for free. You can just go download the audio version of the book at sultans7secrets.com. That's Sultans with an S on both ends. The number 7 secrets with an S on both ends.com. And you can be speaking the language of the gods tonight. Absolutely free. I don't hold anything back. It's all there. And then, of course, there's more to learn if you want to, but start there.
Jeff, I'm always curious with the authors that I have on the series. In the process of writing the book, was there anything that, because I mean, you had written it, I think, 30 years after first reading through that manuscript. You
Yep.
saw the changes in your life almost immediately. You spent 30 years helping other people with it. In the course of writing the book, is there anything that changed in you? Maybe the way you saw things, the way you viewed the material, the lessons. Is there, aside from the process of writing a book, which can be a pain in the ass, how long did it take you to write the book, first of all?
It took about 5 months to write it. And people tell me, don't bawl about that. That's fast, to write a book. But it felt like it was taking forever. But it did change me because, there's something probably, John, that you're really good at. Let's say fitness. You know what to do to drop the 10 pounds that you don't like and to get ripped. And you can do it anytime you decide because you've done it before. You know how to do it. But that doesn't always mean that you're doing it every single day. Like maybe you got in great shape a year ago and then you're kind of relaxing a little bit on that. You're eating some donuts and cake and all right, fine. But anytime you want to, you can, boom, knock that off, get right back to what diet works for you. You know what exercises work, and you're back in shape. Writing the book did that for me because, I have a magical life. I'm not kidding. I've been gifted so many things. And anytime I want something or need something, I know how to get my subconscious mind to give me the answers and bring it to me. So I can do that with anything. And while I was writing the book, I shifted from, hey, it's okay to relax and just chill and eat some donuts to, if I'm going to tell people how to do this, I want to do it for the next month really hard and pay attention to exactly what I'm doing. When I say the game that changes everything, if I have to explain that to someone else, it's one thing to just know how to do it. But I'm going to explain it in words. I need to do it for a while, pay attention, and take some notes so that I can explain it right. So I had probably, one of the most, I had just a burst of success while I was writing the book because of that. And I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Jeff, would you um it, you think there's more writing in the future? Is there anything else that you want to put out? Anything you want to get to in terms of another book or series or anything at all?
Well, I'm writing all the time because I'm in that perpetual mode of, it's one thing for the people who download the book, they get the concepts. The next stage is all of the games and hacks and techniques it takes to apply them. And I'm not saying you can't just take the book and start applying them, but I've done all this work that you're about to embark on. I've done it over 30 years, so I can just hand it to you. Play this game, do that. Here's how you beat the negativity of the world at its own game. That's triggers. When you start feeling bad, use that as a trigger. You look at your dream boards, your dream sheets that depict your magnificent obsession, and you think, oh, I don't want to feel bad, so I'm going to get lost in a daydream that makes me feel good. But then you know what you're doing. You're flooding your subconscious mind. You have confidence. This isn't just dicking around. I'm really doing the most important work of the day right now. And so then after you've done the workshop, there's another group. These are the people who have learned the concepts. They've learned the basic tricks, but there's more to it. And they're not ready to hear that until they've done the other stuff, the foundational stuff. Because, for example, the man made of light and love gave Musa a promise. He said, if you will do one thing, I will guarantee your prosperity. And just in case Musa thought, well, God's idea of prosperity, it doesn't match mine, he spelled it out. You'll be wealthy. You'll be healthy. I mean, he spelled it out. Enemies will rise up against you, and they'll come at you they'll come at you one way, and I will make them flee 7 ways. I will fight your fights for you. I mean, it goes on and on. You can't even believe this promise. But if I tell it to people before they've learned who they are, that their spirit body and their physical body are separate, and their spirit body is a literal child of God who loves you as much as you love your kids, more so, they're not ready for that. It kind of, you can almost, if you talk about it too early, you can lose people where they think, oh, come on.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Oh, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate kind of establishing a solid foundation of understanding certain tools that you have immediate access to kind of get to the outer rings of that knowledge. So I can appreciate that need to set it up correctly so that you don't lose the substance, the meaning, and the value of those later lessons.
Right.
Jeff, obviously we spoke about this manuscript, which has been, it appears to be, the most life-changing manuscript tome that you could have looked through. Is there another book that stands out to you, that's inspired you, a book that really kind of gets you going, that has influenced you, impacted you? I'm always curious, anybody I have on here about their own book, what other book would they choose to discuss that's really impacted them?
Well, this will come as a surprise, and I got to say, it's kind of of course, the scriptures and learning reading Sultan Musa of Mali's writings absolutely changed the way I looked at the scriptures. I almost wasn't interested in them at one point. I'd heard enough. I couldn't use it. I didn't feel like I was one of those good people that could get blessed. So I just kind of wanted to put it on the shelf. But as soon as I read his writings, it changed. The scriptures are just simply a how-to manual to succeed by the person who knows how to succeed. But they've been taught over the pulpit. They've been bastardized. They've
Oh
been
yeah.
their opinion of what it means has been thrown into it. But before the manuscript, I would say the books, or one book in particular that really sculpted me into how to be a man's man, how to command attention, how to handle conflict, is Louis L'Amour novels. And The Daybreakers was the first one I read and always stayed as kind of my how-to manual to grow into being a man. People think of, being a strong man. Oh, so you're out hurting people. No, just the opposite. You're able to hurt people, but you use that to protect people, to protect your family, to build a family, to provide. I mean, The Daybreakers by Louis L'Amour, one of the best books for any man, and maybe women too, at any age. It just teaches the right way to see strength and ability and the reason you want to go get that. You want to be able, you want to be strong, you want to be competent, not to cream others, but literally to lift society and make the world a great place.
Jeff, just in wrapping up, what are you up to these days? Is there anything that you want to share that I might have missed and didn't ask? Anything that you want to share with this audience?
Well, what am I up to? I am having fun. I'm in what I call possibly the last chapter of my life. I've identified what that looks like. I'm running the vision of that all the time in the back of my mind, who I am, what I'm doing. I'm an international land developer, and right now I'm in the mode of buying land overseas where I plan to retire at some point. And when I'm there full time, I'll have all that raw land and I'll start doing what I do. And that's breaking it into self-sustaining mini farms. And I'm having a riot. I mean, I'm just having a ball.
That sounds amazing.
And that's literally what you're supposed to do. People feel like, oh, life is hard, and they say those things over and over again. Okay, but all of that is the currency of life. You're here to have a ball. Start telling the mechanism that controls your life that that's what you're doing, and watch what happens.
Beautiful. And again, the name of Jeff's book is The Sultan Seven Secrets. Jeff, thank you so much for this conversation and for the time that you've given us.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. As you know, I told you before we jumped on that I was really looking forward to it. And it's great to make your acquaintance. I hope we get together again. We can do round two, talk more techniques and hacks if you want to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I'm always curious about another book that somebody would recommend aside from their own for that possible second conversation. So I'm sure we'll get to that one.
Okay. Thanks, John. Have a great day.
Absolutely. You too. And if there's anything that I might have missed, there's so much to cover. Let me know if I should have asked something you're curious about. I could reach out to Jeff, seek some more and additional wisdom, knowledge, and insights. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.